Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Torah Studies. This is our weekly journey into the soul of the Torah portion. I will say this week, we have a very different type of class. And I need to explain. I'm going to take a moment to do a little bit of background on this and somewhat of the evolution of the Torah Studies series in general. So Torah Studies began as a product or as a, not product, project under the Jewish Learning Institute. It began, I don't know, it's got to be like, hold on, I'll tell you exactly. Year 19, about 19 years ago. And they had producing weekly classes, various angles. And then maybe about, I want to say maybe 12 to 14 years ago, they convened a group of teachers from around the world, like a small group, to form a vad. Now, vad is a fancy Hebrew word. I don't know how fancy it is, but vad is a, vad would be a committee, good committee for the, it's a committee to kind of take Torah studies to the next level. And so I was selected to be on the committee, and I've been on the committee ever since, the last dozen plus years. Wow. And we've seen evolution of Torah studies. And there was a meeting of the VAD about a year ago or so. And the question that was being discussed is what could be done to kind of rejuvenate Torah studies in the sense of, kind of give it a jolt, maybe something fresh, something new. And I suggested that perhaps Torah studies moves in a bit of a different direction, not totally different, but a bit of a fresh direction to explore what we call Rashi Sichot, or Rashi Sichos. Let me explain what that is. In 1965, after the Rebbe's mother passed away, Rebbe Simchana, so she passed away in 1965. So in honor of his mom, the Rebbe began delivering every Shabbos talks and insights and really innovative insights into Rashi's commentary on the Torah. And just to explain that for a quick moment, Rashi is considered to be the most fundamental of the biblical commentaries, and you're all familiar with Rashi, right? Rashi, Rabbi Shlomo Yitzhaki, born in the 1100s, 1200s, medieval scholar, born in France, exactly. And he's like, I don't know, it's like the Bible of commentaries. I know that's kind of ironic or whatever that sounds like, but you have the Bible, and then you have Rashi, you have the Torah, the Chumash, in the Chumash, every edition of the Chumash, you open it up, Chumash, Rashi. It's like the basic commentary. However, because Rashi is so basic, for so many years, and nearly 1,000 years, 800, 900 years, it's always been seen as the first commentary you approach, but not necessarily the most sophisticated. You see what I mean? It's like, it's the basic. It'll give you the basic narrative. It'll give you like the first layer. And then you have Ibn Ezra, Ramban, you have Arach Chaim, you have like other commentaries that will open up, Kliyakar, you have others that will open up. Either they deal with the linguistics, kind of etymology, or you have the Balaturim, which deals with numerology. The Ramban has a little bit of philosophy. Then you have Arach Chaim, which is Kabbalah mixed in, and you have like other deeper, what we call perhaps deeper commentaries. 1965, after Rebbe Simchana passes away. So she passed away on Vav Tishrei, in the 6th day of Tishrei, which is between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Dedicated to his mom, the Rebbe delivered for the next 1965. Just do the math to 1992, right? The Rebbe delivered every week, pretty much, insights, talks, and insights into Rashi. These were innovative, completely innovative, and it opened up a brand new era of Torah and Chumash and Rashi scholarship, not just for the Chabad world, but really for the whole world, for the larger world. In fact, there are books. There is one in particular that's called Klali Rashi, the rules of Rashi. In other words, if you're learning Rashi, here's what you need to know about how Rashi operates, derived from the Rebbe's talks.
Is the series called What's Bothering Rashi? What's
Bothering Rashi, exactly, right? What's Bothering Rashi? And it wasn't politics. It wasn't what's bothering Rashi is in the verse itself, right? What's the deal? What is driving Rashi? And so my suggestion was, in honor of 60 years, 1965 to 2025, we're almost to 2025. It will be come Tishrei, come the new Jewish year. It'll be the 60th year. So it was my suggestion that for the upcoming year of Torah, so this was like maybe a year ago already. For the 2025 or 5785 year of Torah studies, that the focus be on Rashi Sichos, exploring. You can take an insight and then repackage it and kind of give the bottom line. But to see how we analyze Rashi is, first of all, it's breathtaking, it's dazzling, it's exciting. It's a brand new genre of study for many of us, for many here that are studying together. And that was my suggestion. The suggestion was taken. And as a sample, because we're not in 5785, you did not miss Rosh Hashanah, just letting everyone know you did not miss the Jewish New Year. That has not happened yet. But as a teaser, there was one class of 5784. They snuck one class in as a, not as a trial, because at this point the train has left the station and it's already in production for the next year. But there's one class, and that's this class. Teitzei, this one class is in the style of what's going to be next year, analyzing Rashi. And so that is the brief overview of the background, my involvement, my suggestion. I hope it works out. I hope for everyone's sake this works out. I don't just mean here, I mean around the world. But this is going to be I think it's going to be a very exciting journey. So let me just state, kind of set out what's going to happen in this class. On one level, this class is going to be like every other Torah studies class, where we take a look at the parsha, we look at the Torah portion, we analyze a verse or two, ask some questions, give some answers, and probe some life lessons. On the one hand, it's going to sound similar. On the other hand, a major focus is going to be on Rashi, and not only what Rashi says, but tonight, what Rashi doesn't say. Okay, let me introduce that piece of it. Rashi writes in his introduction to his commentary. Yes, he wrote an introduction to his commentary. He writes that I am writing this commentary for the Ben Chamish Lemikra, which translates as the 5-year-old who's studying Torah. But let me explain what that means. In Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, it says at the end of chapter 5, it talks about milestones in life. Ben Chamish Lemikra, when you're 5 years old, begin study Chumash. Ben Eser, Shanam LeMishnah, when you're 10, study Mishnahs. 13, 13, mitzvahs, right? 15, bar mitzvah, right? 15, you study Gemara. 18, marriage. Yeah, that's what it says. I didn't write it. I'm not calling my son either, huh?
You study marriage?
No. It says B'shmona Esher l'chuppah, at 18, chuppah. Not studying. So again, what's the timeline? Again, your mileage may vary, and it's, but this is kind of the way it's set out. 5 years old, Chumash. That means like Torah, right? Studying the Bible. 10, Mishnah. Mishnahs. 13, bar mitzvah. 15 is Gemara. 18, marriage. 20, you get a job. I know what you're thinking. What about those 2 years? Yeah, God will provide. And then it continues. You keep on studying and you don't stop studying, right?
It's the father-in-law.
Exactly. Right. Okay. So that is that. Rashi writes in his commentary, in his introduction, I'm writing my commentary for the Ben Chamish Lemikra, for the 5-year-old. He doesn't mean literally for only if you're 5 can you study it. It's like, imagine if there was a commercial for Rashi, right? Rashi, 5 for 5-year-olds. It's not only for 5-year-olds. It means for the person who's studying it on the Ben Chamish Lemikra level, which means the basic level. Thus, the Rebbe in his analysis of Rashi, since we believe, and this is maybe something we have never discussed before, but we'll put it out there. Since we believe, which we do, that not only is Torah divine, but the commentaries, at least through the Shach and Tas, these were commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch, they were also written by divine inspiration. Thus, when we study a Rashi, it's not just a Rashi. When we study Rashi, every word is precise, every word is Torah, not the 5 books, but it's part of Torah scholarship. There's precision, and it's meduyak. Meduyak means it's precise, it's exact, it's precise, and you can analyze it. Based on this, the Rebbe there's 4 rules that we're gonna explore tonight. Each class of next year in this Rashi series is going to explore various rules of Rashi, klalim, rules that come up in this specific area. So the rules tonight, you guys ready for the rules? Rule number 1. These are the rules that we're gonna explore tonight. Rule number 1, and we're gonna see them in action. Rule number 1 is, hold on, I'm filibustering until I get to my page with the rules. Rule number 1 is, Rashi's interpretation is written for the 5-year-old, which means it's explaining the basic meaning of the text. It's not about elaborate. It's not about for the advanced scholar exploring the mystical secrets. This is Chamish Lemikra and Chamish Lemikra. It's for the simple meaning of the verse. So pshutei shel mikra, pshat. Pshat is, remember, 4 levels of Torah interpretation. Pshat, remez, drush, sod, right? The simple pshat, simple meaning. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2, when it comes to Rashi is, thus, Rashi addresses, since Rashi is addressing everything that the 5-year-old, i.e., on a basic level, every question you're going to ask, Rashi addresses, Rashi preempts and answers. Therefore, listen to this. If Rashi does not address a question, what does that mean? Help me out here. If Rashi does not deal with a question, what does that mean?
Then it's not a,
Straightforward.
Not a question. It's not a question. Right. Rashi, so again, rule number 1, Rashi explains pshuta shel mikra. Rashi explains the simple meaning. Rule number 2, Rashi addresses every question that could come up on a simple level. Therefore, rule number 3, if Rashi if he doesn't address a question that you and I think is a basic question, it's only one of 2 options. Either Rashi didn't think it was a question, or he already answered it in a previous commentary, in a previous comment that he made earlier in his commentary. You with me on that? Again, 1, 2, 3. Rule number 1, Rashi addresses the simple meaning. Rule number 2, he addresses every question on the simple level. And on the basic level, on the straightforward understanding level, he'll address every question. Number 3, if he therefore omits addressing something, it means it's not a question, or he already answered the question. You with me? And rule number 4 that we're going to employ tonight is that although Rashi addresses pshat, which is the simple basic level, Rashi also comes from France. Sandrine, I'm looking at you. Rashi comes from France. Huh?
From
Trois. Right? Trois. I don't know how
TR.
Yes, Troyes, as we call them. Yes. Troyes. Trois. How do you say it? Trois. Okay.
Wah.
And thus, listen to this. Thus, and he was also a winemaker.
Oh, yeah.
Rashi was a winemaker. In fact, even today you can buy Rashi wine. No, it's not made by him.
Mhm.
Somebody uses the thing. It's actually, what do they call it? $2 chuck or whatever. It's pretty basic wine. It's whatever the Lashon is on the basic wine.
3 daughters.
It's like
to whom he taught.
he what?
His daughter.
Oh,
He had
Rashi's
3 daughters.
yes.
It's a book or so.
Oh, interesting.
He had 3 daughters that
They were scholars. Yeah.
they were scholars.
But about the wine, so the Rebbe says that when you look deeply into Rashi and you take another look, suddenly you realize that the level of pshat, the simple level, actually alludes to deep, deep secrets. And this is another part of the magical analysis that the Rebbe did for decades on Rashi, explaining Rashi does not discuss Kabbalah in an overt fashion, but when you look at it, Larry, I'm addressing your question in the chat, but when you look at it and really understand what Rashi's saying, you can come up with the yayin shel Torah, yayin, with the wine of Torah that Rashi alludes to. He alludes to it in his commentary on the simple level, which bridges the simple with the mystical. All right, here we go.
But did he really make wine?
I believe he was a winemaker, yes. That's my
Well,
understanding.
of course, because he lived in France.
I don't know that everyone that lived in France was a winemaker.
I'm just
Right.
adding to the
Yeah.
to the
So
fun.
here we go. So when it comes to Rashi, number 1, he addresses the simple meaning. Number 2, if he doesn't address, he speaks on pshat, basic level, simple understanding. Number 2, he addresses all the questions. Number 3, if he doesn't address the question, it means either it's not a question or he already addressed it. And number 4, there are deep secrets contained in his commentary with this in mind, with this in our tool belt, as it were. Now we can jump in to the Rashi that we're going to address today. And so you all have it here. Well, I haven't put it up yet, but you will have it in a moment. Let me get this ready.
Writing.
Yeah, they have a Rashi script, although he didn't write a Rashi script. It was just the publishers that did that, but it's become known as Rashi script, which is a cool form of the Hebrew. All right, here we go. Now, we're going to quote the verse. We're going to quote Rashi. We're going to ask a few questions. We're going to come up with some incredible insights as we explore and extrapolate meaning from Rashi's commentary. So let's begin. Here we go. Sandrine, if you don't mind, get us kickstarted. Text number 1. This is coming from our Torah portion, Teitzei, Deuteronomy chapter 25, the first 3 verses.
If there is a quarrel between people and they approach the tribunal, and the judges judge them, and they acquit the innocent one and condemn the guilty one. And it shall be, if the guilty one has incurred the penalty of lashes, that the judge shall make him learn over and flog him in front of him, commensurate with his crime in number. He shall flog him with 40 lashes. He should not exceed, lest he give him a much more severe flogging than these 40 lashes, and your brother will be degraded before your eyes.
Okay, so here we go. We talk about a quarrel, and we talk about the judges saying this guy is right, this guy is wrong, and the guilty party might incur, there's a situation where there's a penalty of lashes. No, that's not the extensions they put in. It's like, oh, now you have lashes. No, this is lashes in the sense of flogging, right? Corporal punishment. And the number that the Torah prescribes is 40 lashes, but it's really 39, not more than 39, up to based on what the person could tolerate. Now you're thinking, wow, this is cruel and unusual punishment. And you might be right. You might be right that this sounds like a little bit of a harsh type of punishment. But here's what you need to know. What you need to know is, hey, good evening. Good to see you.
Sorry, so late.
No worries. Perfect. You just came in time for the drama. So we just read text 1. So basically, what the Torah is saying is that if a person commits an affront, now it's not obviously a standard situation, a monetary dispute, something a little bit more. It could be a situation where a person took money from someone else, denied taking the money, swore they didn't take the money. So now, after the case went to court, it's between 2 people, indeed, because it's about a financial dispute. But the guy did swear. In other words, there was like almost a religious breach. In that case, it could potentially be subject to penalty of lashes. And so that is the punishment. And all of that is fine and good. However, we have a problem, and it's not about the lashes. That's, again, maybe for another conversation, another time. But really, the problem that comes up is in verse number 1. I'm going to put this back up. You guys can see it in front of you right here. I'm going to read this again. If there's a quarrel between people, so far so good, and they approach the tribunal, that means the judges, the bet din, so far so good, and the judges judge them, so far so good, and they acquit the innocent one and condemn the guilty one, okay, and it shall be the guilty one has incurred the penalty of lashes, then this is what. Now, seemingly, the purpose of the storyline here, of the arc of the story in Torah, is to tell us about how to administer the lashes, right? 40 lashes, don't exceed the 40 lashes, etc. But the setup is 2 people come before the court, one guy's guilty, one guy's innocent. The simple question is, why in verse 1 does the Torah tell us that they acquit the innocent one and condemn the guilty one? Isn't that obvious? 2 people go to court. You would imagine that some will be found guilty and some will be found innocent. In other words, somebody will be considered to be the winner of the court case, and one other guy will be the one who doesn't win the court case. That seems obvious. In other words, the Torah could have just said, hear me out. If there is a quarrel between people and they approach the tribunal, the judges judge them. Verse 2, and it shall be if the guilty one has incurred the penalty of lashes. And you already know, 2 people go to court, one person is going to be found guilty, one innocent, somebody's going to win, someone's going to lose. That's the way it works in court. So why does the Torah say that the judges, v'hitzdiku es hatzadik, v'reshiu es harasha, the tzaddik is right, they acquit the tzaddik and they condemn the rasha? That seems obvious. That seems redundant in the biblical text. When you have a redundancy in the biblical text, guess who steps in to explain? Wait for it. Rashi. Toba, you're right. Correct. In other words, Rashi, as the Pshuta Shamikra, as the one who operates on the level of Pshat, he's not necessarily going to give you some deep philosophical analysis. He's going to explain why the Torah gives us extra words, why the Torah omits words, why the Torah uses a weird language or phraseology. In this case, Rashi, it would seem, should have addressed the words v'hitzdiku es hatzadik v'reshiu es harasha, and they acquit the innocent one and condemn the guilty one. In other words, Rashi should say, this is kind of obvious. Why are you telling me that they are going to acquit the innocent one and condemn the guilty one? That's literally the job of the court. We know that that's what's going to happen. You go to judge, you go to the tribunal, you go to the bet din, right? And the dayanim and the judges judge the case. Obviously, they're going to adjudicate, they're going to judge guilty, innocent. And that's not even the point of the verse. The point of the verse is about how lashes are administered, as text 2 and 3 continue. So why say they acquit the innocent and condemn the guilty one? Why not just segue into the one who gets lashes? This is how you do it. You with me on the question? It's a question on the verse. Why does the verse add this section, the last little bit, the last clause to verse number 1? But it's really more of a question on Rashi. Because if there is a problem in the biblical text, why doesn't Rashi step in? Now we have two answers, right? I already told you the two answers before in the beginning of the class. If Rashi doesn't address what seems to be an obvious problem in the text, it means one of two things. Either number one, it's not a question, in which case we'll push back and say it actually seems like a question, or we're going to say, we could say that Rashi already addressed it. Rashi already answered the question. But now we have to figure out, where does Rashi address this question? Because Rashi literally doesn't comment on it. That what?
Does he give some indication of where?
No. You just have to know Rashi really well and then figure out that, that answers the other question that came later, that's why he didn't have to write it. So here's the insight. You ready? Here's the insight. Rashi already did answer this question. Why does the Torah say that the court vindicates the righteous and finds the guilty one guilty? Again, obviously, what else is the court going to do? And why do you need to tell me what a court does? We know what a court does. Get to the lashes already, right? Get to the lashes, then we'll do the nails. I'm kidding, right? Get to the lashes. Cut to the chase. You tell me that's what the court does. We know what a court does. Rashi already answered this. That's why he doesn't address it. Where did he answer it? In the very first Rashi on this verse. Again, look back at your text. Look back at text 1. Okay, take a look. Take a look at text 1. If there is a quarrel between people, that first part of the verse, Rashi comments on that part. And when you look at what Rashi says right there on that first part of the verse, if there's a quarrel, you'll understand why he doesn't address the last half, and they acquit the innocent and condemn the guilty one, because his comment at the top, if there is a quarrel between people, already answered it. Well, what's his comment on the top? I'm glad you asked. Toba, please read text number 2. Rashi addresses the first few words of the verse, and he comments. And let's now read. So here's how I want to do this, because it's very important as we analyze Rashi to help cut, which means to stay focused here. We quoted a verse, text 1. We had a question on the text, and then the question was compounded by Rashi not addressing the question, which seems like an obvious question, and Rashi addresses all the obvious questions. So how come he didn't? And we're positing that Rashi already addressed it before in his previous comment on the first half of the verse, but now let's unpack what Rashi says there. Text number 2.
If there is a quarrel, they will eventually go to court. We learn from this that peace cannot result from quarrel. Just think, what caused Lot to leave the righteous man Abraham? Clearly, it was a quarrel.
Let me ask you a question. You read this Rashi, and what does Rashi seem to be saying? Anybody, just jump in. What is Rashi saying? What's his big idea in this text number 2? That what? If two people have a quarrel, what's going to happen?
They have to go to court.
They will eventually go to court. And then he says, peace cannot result from quarrel. And then he brings a story of Lot and Abraham, right? Abraham was the uncle of Lot. Lot was his nephew. And they had a quarrel, and they separated, they split. Clearly, it was a quarrel. That's what drove them apart. So it seems like Rashi is, there's a debate tonight. Is anyone familiar about this? Yeah. Turns out there's a debate.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. Don't even know what.
Whatever. There's a debate.
I don't know.
Right. So a quarrel, right? Quarrel says a peace cannot result from a quarrel. Peace cannot result from a quarrel. That's what Rashi's saying. Okay. First of all, I will say this. What's Rashi saying? The Torah is telling us, look back at text number 1. The Torah is giving us a scenario. There's a quarrel between people. They approach a tribunal, right? There's a judgment made. And then here's how to administer lashes, not more than 40. That's what the Torah is telling us. Rashi Text 2 says if there's a quarrel, quarrel leads to court, and that leads to no peace. There's no peace that results from a quarrel, like Abraham and Lot, that ultimately separate and go their separate ways. What's he saying? First of all, why is Rashi making a PSA, right? Public service announcement. You should know quarrels are bad. Who's talking about quarrels being good or bad? What are you talking about? Rashi, we're literally giving a scenario. Two people go to court. Here's how to administer lashes. Rashi takes the opportunity to climb up on a soapbox and say, hear ye. Quarrels are not good because they never result in peace. What are you saying? First of all, what is Rashi's intention? Second of all, and this is the bigger question. Stay with me for a second. The bigger question is, Rashi has a hot take here. He says, peace cannot result from quarrel. One second. They didn't just argue, they went to court. Literally, the purpose of going to court is to figure out a solution. Of course, peace comes from going to court in this scenario. Literally, the situation we're talking about is there's a quarrel between people, they go to court, and there's a verdict. So what's the problem? What's Rashi saying? First of all, why are you getting on a soapbox and preaching about the problem with quarrels? Number one. Number two, his whole mahalach, his whole premise is questionable. If you quarrel, you can never lead to peace. Who says? You go to court, you get a decision, and you move on. In fact, we find this as a precedent in Torah itself. Before we get to the precedent, let's read text number 3. I'm going to read it. Okay, text number 3. It would seem that the opposite is true. This is the Maskil David. Maskil David is a commentary on Rashi's commentary. Just so you know, there are commentaries that explain Rashi's commentary. We call them super commentaries. Not that they have capes, but they're commentaries on commentaries. Okay, so the Maskil David is one such commentary. And he says the following on Rashi, it would seem that the opposite is true. And that's my question that I just asked. Approaching the court for judgment is the pathway to peace. As in the verse, and also all these people will come upon their place in peace, which means that when you go to court, and I'll give you the context of Exodus 18 in a moment, which many of you, I think, know. But the point is that the idea of going to court is to lead to peace and not to the opposite. So what is Rashi saying in his comment that, if you go to court, if you're quarreling and you go to court, you'll never get peace? Literally the purpose of going to a bet din, of going to the court is to create peace, to get a solution and to move on. That's literally about peace. So what's Rashi saying? Now, let me give you the context of the verse. Remember the Torah, you remember the fellow named Yitro? Jethro in English, right? Who was he? Moshe's father-in-law. Good. Moshe's father-in-law. So what happens? Yisro, I'm just going to say Yisro. Yisro was one of the advisors of Pharaoh back in the day. Just going to give you the quick bio. And then he said something that Pharaoh didn't like. And so he had to run away to a different country. And he became a leader, a big macher, as we would say, in Midian. Moshe, right? Moses, right? Similarly had an interesting journey. He grew up in the palace of Pharaoh, rescued by Pharaoh's daughter. He also has to run away. Ends up in Midian, marries Yisro's daughter, Tzipporah. They have a few kids. And then Moshe is called by the burning bush. He's called into action to be the rescuer, the savior of the Jewish people. And thus he does that. At the ripe age of 80 years old. Can you imagine? 80 years old, leading the people. Ay, what a schlep. He led the people from 80 to 120, 40 years. Now, stick with me. After the Exodus, the Torah tells us, and the Torah portion actually called Yisro, that his father-in-law comes with his daughter, i.e. Moshe's wife, and their kids to meet up with them in the wilderness, in the desert, right? When they were in Egypt, it wasn't safe to bring the wife and kids. Why would you bring more people into a situation of slavery? But once they became free, Yisro says, great, let's pack our bags and let's go meet, let's go join Moshe and the people in the desert. And that's what happens. And then Yisro, the father-in-law, what happens? He sees Moshe judging the people. And he sees a big line outside of Moshe's tent. The people are waiting. He says, what's going on? Well, they have questions and I've got answers, right? What was that? You've got questions, you've got answers? Staples? Something like that? I don't know. Yeah. So they're lining up. So Yisro says to his son-in-law, "It's not good. They should all wait for you. It's burdening you. It's burdening them. No one wins from this situation. Create a system of lower courts, i.e., those that have an understanding of the law that could handle the basic questions, then more advanced scholars or judges that handle the more difficult questions. And if it's really difficult, no one can answer, then they come to you, and then you go to God if you can't figure it out. That's the protocol. That's the way it should be. That's the reference. That's the reference at the end of text number 3. And also, so Yisro says let's read text 4. Literally text 4. Okay, here we go. So here's the context of Yisro, father-in-law, telling his son-in-law Moshe about how to judge the people. Shifra, if you don't mind, to read text number 4.
And the judges shall judge the people at all times, and it shall be that any major matter they shall bring to you, Moshe, and they themselves shall judge every minor matter, thereby making it easier for you, and they shall bear the burden with you. If you do this thing, and God commands you, you will be able to survive, and also this people will come upon their place in peace.
Look at that. He tells his son-in-law, if you do this, you'll be able to survive. In other words, it'll alleviate your burden instead of single-handedly dealing with all the issues. And also, all these people will come upon their place in peace, and it's going to be good for them. But you know what the implication is also? That when people come in a dispute, and they come to a Rav, they come to a rabbi, they come to a Bet Din, and it gets resolved, what's the outcome? Shalom, peace. So why does Rashi say if 2 people are quarreling, they're going to go to court, and it will never end in peace? What does that mean? The whole purpose of going to court is to end in shalom, to end in peace, and we have a biblical precedent. Okay. The answer, my friends, is blowing in the wind, huh? Huh? The answer is blowing in the wind.
The example of Lot and Abraham, an example of not having.
So Lot and Avram, good question. So Lot and Avram, so what happens? They have a dispute between the shepherds of Lot, the shepherds of Avram, and there's, should they graze, should they not, should they graze freely or graze only in certain places with muzzles, etc. So they got into a fight, and then Avram basically says to his nephew Lot, at some point he says, look, it's not working out, it's too much quarreling, let's go our separate ways, and that's it. But they never reconcile.
They go to court though?
No, they didn't go to court. No, but Rashi's point is, when there's a quarrel, it will never end in peace. No, that's exactly the question. So if you don't go to court, it doesn't end in peace. So you're asking a great question. How is Rashi's example of Avram and Lot an example for the case that the Torah speaks of? The Torah says 2 people are quarreling, they go to court, the court finds one guilty and one innocent, and there's a court rules in favor of one as opposed to the other, and then lashes are administered. That's the arc of the verse. But Rashi gets on a soapbox and says, first of all, quarreling is no good, because quarreling leads to going to court. And once you're quarreling, it will never lead to peace like Avram and Lot. First of all, why the PSA? Second of all, who says that when you go to court, you're never going to get peace? And you're asking a third question. The example that you're bringing from Avram and Lot, they didn't go to court. Maybe if they went to court and they got a solution, they would have solved the issue. What is Rashi saying? Why is he saying it? How does he know what he's saying? What's going on? And the key is the nuance in the Hebrew words. There's a nuance. Take a look. Take a look. I'm going to show the text again. This is how we analyze Torah. This is how we analyze every word of Torah. Take a look. Look at text 4, which we just read, which is Yisro telling his son-in-law Moshe about how to judge. I have to read in Hebrew. Kol hadavar hagadol yavi alecha. All the big things. What are the matters called? Davar. Davar in Hebrew means?
Speak.
Well, it also means speak, but a matter. You know what it doesn't call it? A riv. You know where it says riv? Text 1. Ki yihi a riv bein hanashim. If there's a riv is translated here as a quarrel. Yisro never talked about quarrels, he talked about things. You see the difference? Take a look at text 5. I'm going to read text 5 in Hebrew. Ki yiyeh lahem davar ba'elai. Moshe says, if any of them has a matter, let them come to me. and I judge between a person and their neighbor, and I make known the statutes of God and his teaching. This is how Moshe rolls it out to the people. After his father-in-law gives advice, he then rolls it out to the people. This is how it's going to work. This is the new protocol. If you have a problem, if you have a matter, come to me. He doesn't say if you have a quarrel. Davar, not riv. And now you're thinking, what's the difference? Davar or riv. Here's the difference. Here's the difference. The difference is in perspective. The difference is in attitude. The difference is in the intention. If two people are arguing and the intention is that let's figure out a solution, then they'll get a solution. If it's solution oriented, if they have a dispute, it's a genuine dispute. They don't see eye to eye, but the goal is to solve it and to move forward. Then what will happen is they will solve it and move forward. Text 1. But if there's a riv, not a davar, not a matter that needs to be figured out, but a riv, if there's a dispute, no, if there's a quarrel, that's not a matter. A quarrel is not a matter. What's a quarrel? A quarrel is, my interest is not to solve this. My interest is to be right. And that's something else. That's a whole different ballgame. My interest here is not to solve a dispute. My interest is to be right. And sometimes, even worse, for you to be wrong.
So that brings me back to what's been bothering me in the first one, which is a riv. And the lashes, I mean, what if one isn't right and one isn't wrong? What if there should be a compromise or something? Why is the court so intent on making one right and one wrong and applying lashes?
Good. So the Torah is only speaking of a specific scenario where lashes apply, which we're not going to get into tonight. Maybe the person swore falsely or whatever it is. But your point is where we're headed with this. In other words, if it all goes back to the intention of the disputants, okay? So let's break it down. If the intention of the two individuals is following, we don't see eye to eye, we don't see things the same way, we have different perspectives, let's call upon or let's engage a third party or third parties, a court, judges, to figure this out and get a solution. Great, it will lead to peace. If the intention is if the situation is not just a davar, a matter, if it's a riv means it's now personal. Now there's ego involved. Now it's, I gotta win. The Rebbe once said, as a joke, not really a joke, but as a quirk of human behavior, he says, if you go to a Rav and you ask him, is this behema kosher? You ask, is this, we shechted an animal or we slaughtered an animal, is it kosher? And the Rav says, the rabbi says, it's not. So the fellow that's kosher-minded will say, all right, we can't eat it. It's a loss. Yeah, and a loss could be, I don't know, if a whole animal, how much meat can you get? What's the value of it? I don't know, maybe a few $100s, maybe more. I don't know. It's not my industry, right? But imagine if the same guy has a $50 dispute with someone else, right, in the community, and goes to the rabbi, and the rabbi says he rules like the other guy. We got to get rid of this rabbi. What does he know? This rabbi. He'll start making a campaign to get rid of the rabbi. Why? Because of the $50. When it came to the $500 loss, you didn't care. But the $50 loss, suddenly you do care. Suddenly the rabbi doesn't know what he's talking about. It's not about that. It's not about losing the money. It's about him. It's about the other guy winning. It's not about you lose. It's not about the loss that you're incurring. It's about the win that somebody won over you. This is what a quarrel is. A quarrel is ego, and not only ego of I want to win, I can't see you defeat me. And that's why Rashi says, if there's a quarrel, it will go to court. They're not going to figure out amongst themselves. It will go to court, and there will never be peace. How does Rashi know? Was he a prophet? No, you use the word riv. If there's a davar, if there's a dispute, a standard dispute, it will lead to peace. Right? If the two parties go into the machloket, if they go into the dispute, as it were, with the right intentions, they'll figure it out. They may need help. It may take some time. They'll figure it out. If they go in as a riv, which is a unique Hebrew word, if they go in quarreling, if they go in for blood because they want to win, they don't want the other one to lose, Rashi says, PSA, Know what riv is. Rashi explains pshat. He says, why does the Torah suddenly use the word riv when before in Deuteronomy, when in Exodus, when it talks about going to court, it used the word davar, a matter. Why suddenly a riv? He says, that's why they went to court. That's why. That answers the other question, the original question we had. That's why the Torah says, just let me quote this again. Let me pull this up. That's why the Torah says, that one will be right and one will be wrong. In other words, there'll be a winner and a loser. If you go to win, if you go for blood, well, ultimately someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. If you go as a davar, both can possibly win. You with me on that? If you take the perspective of we have a situation, we have a dispute, we don't see eye to eye, but we're going to figure this out. You can find a solution where there's no winner, there's no loser, everyone wins. You can find some sort of compromise or mediation or some situation where it's a win-win, it all works out. If you have a riv, then everyone's going for the jugular. And ultimately, yes, one's going to win, one's going to lose, and there's going to be blood on the ground as well. And that is why Rashi doesn't address the question of why does the Torah say that the court will find someone righteous and someone guilty. Isn't that obvious? The answer is no, it's not obvious. It's in this case where there's a riv, there's going to be a winner and a loser because that is the intention of both. The intention of both of them is to win and go to the end. Does that make sense? Yes? In other words, the Torah is giving a scenario in the lead up to the specific law about how to administer lashes. The Torah is also giving us a very important lesson. Don't let it escalate to that point. You have the option to deal with disputes, to deal with interpersonal matters or whatever it is. You have the option to deal with it in a way in which you can find mutual understanding. It may take a third party. It may take some time. It may take some work. It may take a few third parties to work at it, but you can come up with a solution if there is the correct intent. The moment one party or both parties say, I don't want to compromise, I want to win. And not only do I want to win, I want them to lose. The moment that happens, end the story.
Rabbi
You're done.
Ari,
Yes.
last week in Shoftim, they had the case where they went to the court and then it escalated to the Sanhedrin. And the Sanhedrin ruled, and then one of the judges protested after. And what did they do? They take him out and they strangled him on one of the festive holidays because he disagreed with the Sanhedrin. That was the judge. This is what you're talking about, the ego, that the judge wouldn't accept the ruling from the Sanhedrin. And then he was found out to be guilty himself of that.
Yep.
And they made an example of him.
Correct. And it's the listen, Torah's not always for the faint of heart, just going to say it, right? But it's exactly when the ego gets involved, you're done. Take a look at how the Rebbe frames this beautifully, powerfully. I don't say beautifully, maybe it's the wrong word, but powerfully in text number 7. Text number 6. When two people have a disagreement that isn't characterized as a full-on fight, then the disagreement can be resolved and come to a peaceful conclusion. Either they figure it out between themselves or the courts mediate a compromise. Even in the event that the court rules in favor of one party, the ruling will still bring harmony between the parties because, again, everyone went into it with not contentious intent. But when the disagreement is an all-out fight, like a riv, it can never reach a peaceful conclusion. They may come to court and receive a clear verdict determining who's right and who's wrong, but it's not as if they will thereafter come to a peaceful resolution. There will always be anger. There will always be it will always be a problem, etc. That is the difference between the two scenarios. Scenario number 1 is where there is the intent, the mindset of let's find a solution. We're not fighting. We're just disagreeing. We can come to a solution, and a solution will be found. In the second scenario, that's a davar, and that's what Yisro tells Moshe, and Moshe tells the people, if there's an issue, come to me or come to the lower courts and then come to me. We'll figure it out. We'll work it out. Either there'll be a compromise. Even if there's not a compromise, everyone will say, it's okay. I lost this time. It's not a big deal. I could see it from their perspective as well. It is what it is. But if there's a riv, and we've all been, right? We've all either been part of it or seen that when it switches from being, a standard not seeing eye to eye to being personal. Once it gets personal, now what? There's no peaceful resolution. You're going to definitely go to court. You're going to duke it out, right? There's going to be a winner and a loser. And even after a clear verdict, the winner's not really going to be happy, still be angry. And the loser's definitely not going to be happy, will still be angry. And that's the way it's going to end. And it's going to end in machloket and dispute. Why? Because when they went in, there wasn't the good intention of finding a resolution. David, jump in.
Hey, I was wondering when we first read text 1, that it used the language that one side was a tzaddik and the other side was a rasha. And I was wondering that caught my attention. And now I think I know why. Because in a riv, each side thinks it's the tzaddik and the other side is the rasha.
Perfect. Love that. Love that. I like the enhancement. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Why is it so stark? Winner and loser, righteous and evil? Who says tzaddik and rasha? Maybe just more correct and less correct. But you're right. It's almost like it's looking from the perspective.
Yeah.
It's almost like looking from the perspective of the two parties. They're saying, oh, wow. Sorry about that. We have fireworks that showed up somehow with, anyway, right? What's happening? Sometimes you do symbols and it shows up. Like if I did this, you have like a thumbs up that pops up. There you go. Anyway, what's the point? The point is that when you have the riv, now it's a bloodbath. And everyone says, I'm right. And not just right and wrong, but I am just and they're evil. Think about, I'm not segueing into politics. However, we're going to go there, but not really there, but a little bit there. It's not just, I disagree. It's that the other side is evil. That's the way it goes.
So why does the court have to take that tact?
The court is,
it's
a good question. Because when the two litigants show up,
can't the court say this?
What's the court going to say? You have to agree to mediation? No, the court can't force a mediation. The court can't impose a mediation. So the court's hands are tied, essentially, and the court has to say, you're right, you're wrong. Not that the court is saying you're good, you're evil, but I like what David is saying. It's almost like the whole thing is viewed from the perspective of the what's called the litigants. Now let's take a look at text number 7. And the Rebbe says, this is why Rashi doesn't comment. Remember we said that Rashi doesn't comment on why the Torah says, why not? Why isn't that superfluous? Here we go. The litigation in the scenario can be defined specifically as they acquit the innocent one and condemn the guilty one. We're not dealing with two litigants seeking the truth and a peaceful resolution between themselves. Rather, one is innocent and the other is guilty. The entire function of litigation is only to affirm who is the innocent party and who is the guilty party, but not to actually bring about peace. And again, there's two ways to understand that. Either the court is looking at that, or that's the way that the two individuals are looking at that. That I'm innocent, they're guilty. Or not even innocent and guilty. I'm a tzaddik, they're a rasha. I'm righteous. It's not just innocent and guilt. That's the way the English translates it here, which may or may not be correct. V'hitzdiku es tzaddik, v'yirshu es harasha. Tzaddik and rasha is not just innocence and guilt. It's good versus evil. This is like, you're either with us or with the terrorists, like level of distinction. That's like, if you're on my side, right, then you're a tzaddik. If you're on their side, we're not friends anymore. That's the level of contentiousness that the riv is. So so in short, we had a question on the verse that two people go to court, original question, people go to court, and Torah says one is deemed guilty, one is deemed innocent, or innocent and guilty. And the question is, don't tell me that. We know what courts do. Just move on to the lashes. And how come then Rashi doesn't address that question? We said Rashi does in his first comment, because Rashi explains what a riv is. What's a riv? Not a davar. A riv is a quarrel. A riv is going to go to court. A riv is going to be a bloodbath. A riv is never going to lead to peace. And a riv means you have a tzaddik and a rasha, either with the verdict or even with the perspective of the two parties themselves. And the one who loses will always say, I was righteous and they were evil, even when the decision goes against them. And that's the way it is. That's the way it is. The other side is evil, evil, evil. I'm righteous, righteous, righteous. And it becomes a holy war. Instead of being a matter that could be worked out and resolved and matter of ideas, a matter of ideals, a matter that can be, you can find a compromise, you can find mediation. It suddenly becomes about good versus evil, right versus wrong. And what are you going to do now? How do you mediate that? If I'm righteous and they're evil, there's no middle ground, right? That's the way it is. And this leads us to an understanding to Yain Shel Rashi, Yain Shel Torah, the wine of Torah. Because although Rashi addresses in an amazing way, by not addressing the second half of the verse, we learned that he addressed it in the first half of the verse, and he addressed it in a magnificent way by explaining what a riv is and why it never leads to peace. Because of all of this, we walk away with a life lesson, and the life lesson is, don't let your disputes, don't let your matters, don't let the issues escalate to the level of riv. It should never get to that point. In other words, Jay, I say this for you and for everyone, Lego the ego, right? Take out, what's this, right? We've talked about this many times. What's the source of all the problems? The ego. Ego gets in. That just makes it all, so now it's no longer something that you can even work out. Now it's, I have to win. Now what are you going to do? It's over. It's over. It's going to end. It's going to crash and burn at this point. Your ego's involved. Forget about it. You're done. Take a look at text number 8. This is from one of my favorite texts. This is from the text that we once did a few years ago. A few years ago, we studied called Learning How to Love. We did it Sunday mornings.
Love the other.
Yeah. It was a beautiful text. And he explains there the klipa of Midjan, which is the evil, the representation of Midjan, which is the idea of strife, fighting for no purpose. And again, this is a recent conversation, but Midjan is the one, remember when Balak hired Bilam to curse the people? Balak was afraid, he was the king of Moab, he was afraid that the Jews were going to attack, but Bilam knew that they weren't because he was a prophet, but he still was like, hey, I'll stir up trouble anyway for a buck. So that represents hatred that has no basis, that has no rationale. It's just illogical or irrational hatred. Let's go. The root cause of division and strife, this is text number 8, is represented by the evil of Midjan, which is etymologically related to the Hebrew word madon. Midjan and madon, right? Similar words. Namely, madon means separation, hatred and division. People can't stand one another. What is Midjan? It's when people can't stand one another with blind hatred, even when the other party did them no harm whatsoever, nor do they harbor any ill will toward them. It's simply that one person is unable to tolerate the existence of another and hates them with a passion, right? You being around bugs me. Who would ever say that? Who would ever admit that? But it happens. The cause of this is the ego. There we go. Which leaves no room for another person, leaving them with no choice but to oppose the very existence of someone else. The other person's mere existence minimizes their ego, and thus they can't stand them and certainly can't befriend them. You are sucking my oxygen in this room. Arais, get out. Right? That's the level of Midjan. Sadly, in recent times, look at what the Rebbe says. This is the 5th Rebbe who lived 1860 to 1920. How did he know what was going on in 2024? All right, listen, that's human truths are truths. Sadly, in recent times, he writes, and this was written in 1899, yeah, so a long time ago. Sadly, in recent times, Jewish communities everywhere are rife with discord and disagreement about all public matters, especially about sacred affairs such as matters pertaining to the rabbinate, ritual slaughter, the synagogue, and the like. People are unable to unite. What one person says, the next person must say the opposite. What one builds, the other feels compelled to tear down. Yeah, it's like the joke about the one Jew who gets stranded on the desert island, and they come to rescue him. And there's 2 synagogues. Why 2 synagogues? Here's the one I go to. Here's the other one I would never step foot into. Right? The idea that I have to find something that I hate with a passion, I would never go into there. Why? He says ego. That these differences of opinion are really a breakdown on a much deeper level. It's not about the issue. It's a deeper level. The conflicting opinions aren't actually rational arguments, but rather what each party wants and what do they want and why do they want it? Simply because the other party wants the opposite. You hear that? Why do I have my position? Because you have the other position. So I had to take the opposite. Why? Because I can't stand. Because I can't agree with you. Due to the sad reality that they can't stand one another. That is why they disagree. He's describing not a good situation. He's describing a terrible situation. And what he says is, unfortunately, the state of affairs in many a Jewish community. And he says, it's almost like a plague. It's almost a mageifa. It's a plague that's plaguing the Jewish community, that there's infighting And it's not based on, yes, it's couched in ideological terms. No, we're disagreeing about ideas, but it's not really about ideas. It's about an ego. And when you have a fight that's about ego, there's never a resolution. You can't resolve that. The resolution is Lego, my ego. Remember that commercial? Lego, my ego. Let go of the ego. Stop being so driven by selfish considerations. Okay, let's take a look.
So is that why they had to separate Abraham and Lot? Because there was no way to get.
I don't know. The implication of that Rashi, then, if we look at it in retrospect, is he's saying a situation where it wasn't a really ideological matter that could be resolved, sitting down and hashing things out. It got to the point of ego. Now, are we condemning Lot? Are we condemning Avram? Are we saying it takes two to tango? Is one side having the ego enough to break down the situation where it can't be resolved? I don't know. You're asking a good question. I don't know. I don't know if the Rebbe addressed it in the original. I would have to look at the original talk. I don't know if he addresses the Avram Lot issue, but and I don't know if I want to besmirch Avram and say, well, he had also an ego that couldn't allow him to tolerate his nephew's, a different type of lifestyle and behavior. I don't know. Maybe it was on Lot's side. But the point is,
I mean the shepherds, they just couldn't stand each other. There was nothing that could be done about that.
Right. Okay. So you're saying it's not them, it's the shepherds. Yeah, it could be the shepherds. And it was a situation where it wasn't something that, again, could be mediated. It was just, it got to that point. Let's take a look at text number 9. We're going to close it out because we're at the time. We're going to close out with a few quick texts. So text number 9 is fascinating from the Mishnah. The Mishnah says the following. All right, here we go. Mishnah Sanhedrin, Adam, the first person, was created alone, to teach you that with regard to anyone who destroys one soul from the Jewish people, the verse ascribes them blame as if they destroyed an entire world. And conversely, anyone who sustains one soul from the Jewish people, the verse ascribes them credit as if they sustained an entire world, right? If you have Adam is the one and only human being on earth, so every person is like a whole world, right? Another reason Adam, the first person, was created alone, second paragraph, right? This was done due to the importance of maintaining peace among people, so that one person will not say to another, my father is greater than your father. Because if you say that, just keep on going up the generations, and eventually you'll get to the same original father, i.e. Adam. We all come from Adam, which means that no one can really say, I have better lineage than you. Are you kidding me? We all come from the same man, Adam and Eve, right? Same man and woman. We all come from the same one. So here's the question. That's what the Mishnah says. Paragraph 1 speaks about the uniqueness of everyone, the unique identity of everyone. And paragraph number 2 speaks about the fact that we're not so unique. We're all from the same one. So which is it? Which is it? And so we have a beautiful answer. This is text number 10, a beautiful perspective. It is true that every person is an entire world and no two people think alike. But this should never lead one to conclude that there cannot be another legitimate perspective other than their own. That should not get to your head. Yes, you're a whole world. Yes, you matter. Yes, yes, yes. But take easy with the ego. There can even be a conflicting perspective. It's okay. It's all right. What's more, each person must approach a conflicting perspective with respect. After all, the other person is also an entire world. You're an entire world. Guess what? They're also an entire world. So their perspective must be considered with the appropriate seriousness and respect. Such an approach brings true lasting harmony, for it is grounded in the Torah's perspective that every person is an entire world. It also brings one to a deeper appreciation of their own perspective, their own qualities, as well as their own deficiencies. This will bring them to the ultimate truth, thus enhancing their own entire world. This applies to every individual until there's true harmony in the entire world. That is a very powerful text. The text is basically saying that the 2 points of the Mishnah are not in dispute. Point number 1, you're a whole world. Point number 2, you got to get along. Why? Because they're also a whole world. You're not any better than that other guy. Take it easy with the ego. Again, that's where we can neutralize the ego that leads to riv, that leads to quarrels that don't seek a resolution, but seek rather blood, and that's unhealthy. And we have a beautiful example of this. The Aruch HaShulchan writes about how the debates used to happen back in the day. All the disputes of the Talmudic sages and the subsequent generations were in an effort to properly understand the word of God, never about ego. Each one is a legitimate halachic perspective. This is the beauty of our sacred and pure Torah. The Torah is called a song, and the beauty of a song in Hazinu. And the beauty of a song is specifically when divergent sounds come together. That is the primary source of the beauty of music, i.e. harmony. And what is harmony? Harmony is born of diversity. If you have a soloist, You don't call that harmony. Harmony is when you have multiple sounds together, which means if any person says, nope, there's no other perspective, there's no other position, there's no other opinion, it's only me and I'm right and everyone else is wrong, and my ego doesn't tolerate any dissent, any difference of opinion. What is that? It's not Torah's song. Torah's song requires harmony. We're going to conclude with Rabbi Kook, with a reading from Rabbi Kook, whose yahrzeit was the third day of Elul, which was a few days ago. He was the first chief rabbi of then pre-1948 Israel. He passed away in 1935, one of the original leaders of the religious Zionist movement. And Rabbi Kook, Harav Kook, has a beautiful and eloquent reading, text number 13. In the scholarly world of legal and Talmudic investigations, the collective experiment has produced wonderful results. Each perspective, agreeing and dissenting ones, has been collected and has enriched our knowledge, broadening the scope of our imagination, and edified the product of our collective intellectual capacity. It has given us a handle to reach new destinations in the universe of our legalistic imagination and come up with clear conclusions that match every scenario situation. The tangible benefit we've gained from this broad scholarship, which has been built from collecting conflicting perspectives, completely neutralizes any taste of discord or division that could possibly arise from exchanging conflicting perspectives. Instead, it has brought love and endless respect for all perspectives, even conflicting ones, and has enabled us to see the positive results from each one's perspective, from each one's respective sheen and force. And here's, again, it's a beautiful text and a tribute to Harav Kook, in that he says essentially that over the years, Jewish scholarship, i.e. legal, halachic, and Talmudic scholarship, has produced not dissent, not fighting, but rather harmony, where you have machloket, you have dispute, but it's on the same page of Talmud. They coexisted, and it coexists, and we study both, and we say elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim, both of the word of the living God. We give respect to all the positions. We give respect to all the opinions because they respected each other. It was never about ego. It was never about conflict. It was never about quarrel. It was never about I'm right, you're wrong. Not only am I right, you're wrong. I am righteous and you are evil. Imagine if Hillel and Shammai said, Hillel says, I say that this is the will of God. And if you disagree, then you don't believe in God. Imagine if Hillel said that to Shammai. The whole thing would break down. That never happened. Hillel says, I believe, I understand Torah, God to be saying this, and I understand that you see it a little bit differently, and that's okay. And I have my position, you have your position, but they never sought blood. If they did, you know what Judaism would look like? Kind of what sometimes we see in other contexts of dispute and discord, where it's not just I have this opinion, you have that opinion. I have the right opinion, and you have the Russia opinion. You have the evil opinion. My friends, it's time to let go of the ego. Sorry, to let go of the ego. Ego is edging God out anyway. We don't want to do that, right? Ego is no space for God. It's about a little bit of humility. You can have your perspective. You need to have your perspective. If you don't, then you're missing out. God created you for your perspective, right? If you weren't meant to have an opinion, you probably wouldn't be, God wouldn't have a need for you to be on planet Earth. God created you to have an opinion. God created you to go about life in your unique way. That's great. But give that same space to the other guy. Give the same space, give the same place for the other guy. Yes, you might not see eye to eye. But you know what? They also, from their perspective, you're the one that doesn't see eye to eye to them. A world in which disagreement or difference of opinion leads to dispute, leads to quarrel, leads to riv, leads to seeking blood and delegitimizing the other is a world that no one really wants to live in. It's a world of ugliness. It's a world of hate. It's a world of fighting. And no one's happier. We live in a world in which the discourse landscape has, I think, in many areas, gone to that place. And it's leaked also into the Jewish community, where it's not just, I have a different opinion about halacha, a different opinion about this. It's I am righteous, you're evil. Delegitimizing the other opinion. And I think the message that we can take from today is that that's Riv. Rashi, 900 years ago, told us in his commentary, that's not good. It will never lead to peace, which means it's never going to end well. Even if you win, you're still going to be crusading. If you lose, you'll definitely be bitter and also crusading. So who wins from this? Rather, don't make it a riv. Make it a davar. Make it a thing to resolve. Make it a matter to figure out. If it's a matter which requires letting go of the ego, not making it about you, keeping it in the realm of ideas and positions. And when we do that, peace will prevail. We'll end because we're past the time. I want to end with a blessing. May we all take the wisdom of the Torah and take the insight of Rashi, the way the Rebbe explains Rashi. May we take that insight and integrate it in our lives. And if we find ourselves, if we notice that there's an area or two, or maybe just one, whatever it is, in which our ego is inserted a little bit too much, where it's becoming a little too contentious, becoming a little bit too hot, a little too intense, take a step back. Allow the ego, take out the ego, make it about the idea. Doesn't mean you have to concede to everyone else's idea. You can maintain your own idea, but give space for the other person's idea as well. Thank you very much for joining me tonight for Torah Studies. Hope you enjoyed it. And again, this was a tease. This was a preview of the style of class, which is not that dissimilar, but it also features the Rashi analysis piece and the rules of Rashi that we're going to pick up over the year. And again, this is starting from the new Jewish calendar. So from the next cycle, from Bereshit, from Genesis, going through all 5 books of the Torah, we're going to have a full year of Rashi analysis, Torah analysis, but focusing on Rashi, coming away with lessons. And throughout the year, we will probably cover dozens and dozens and dozens of nuanced rules, of nuanced techniques of Rashi, and it's going to be magnificent. So that's upcoming next week, standard Torah Studies class, but that's upcoming. By the way, my other suggestion for Torah Studies on the board was to do a year of Haftorah study, which I've mentioned before that we should do that. I mentioned that also in the context board, and there was a preliminary agreement that should be done. So maybe for the following year, but we wanted to get this in for the 60-year anniversary since the launch of these Rashi analyses. So we wanted to do it this year, and then maybe next year we'll do that. Or we'll see if I get 2 in a row, 2 ideas in a row. That would be kind of cool. All right, not that it's about me. The whole point is that it's take out the ego. But anyway, that would be nice.
I just want to point out that even with when it becomes a riv, the punishment is moderated so that one doesn't see the humiliation of the other, and it says that, and it says specifically your brother, so that it's even the Torah is trying to bring the 2 parties together again.
Powerful. Yeah, that's beautiful. Text 1, it says, right, don't go overboard, because again, when you pit righteousness versus evil, you might think that the court will also morph into that and become, let's get rid of this guy. No, even the court is told. I like that insight. The court is told, make sure that it's clear that yes, in this context, one person needs to be there are consequences for whatever the situation is, which the Torah doesn't specify the consequences, but it's got to be done in a way of dignity and respect, which you're right, may open up the eyes of the parties, be like, hold on, maybe we can also look at each other with respect. If the court looks at us with respect, maybe we can look at each other with respect. And the question, the elephant in the room is, why can't the court come in and say, hey, guys, take a step back, right? Walk back from the ledge. And I think that maybe they tried, and maybe you can't. Sometimes you just can't do it. A court can't impose, you can't impose mediation if they don't agree to it.
They can, but it doesn't always work.
Hold on one second. In Bezdin, can they impose mediation? Not necessarily. Right. So not in all cases can they impose mediation. The question is not can they impose mediation. The question is how do you respond to how they show up? And you can respond. Right. Sometimes they'll have to be a winner and have to be a loser. But at the same time, I like that insight that you don't go all in on it. You try to keep the respect and the piece of it. And so that's the lesson. That's the bottom line. Bottom line is take the ego out of the dispute and make it less about winning and less about them losing. Make it about resolving the ideas. And now let's watch the debate. I'm kidding, right? I mean, that's right. It's kind of like a good lead into people and sides seeking probably blood from the other one, which is not so healthy. If we kept it about ideas, we'd be healthier. I'm not going to get into politics. It's not what I do here, but at least I can comment on the general what's the language? The not the tenor of the conversation, but the whatever, right? The general whatever, the general heat of the conversation. We can certainly bring things a little bit down. All right.
Great
Pleasure.
Thank
Questions,
you.
comments?
So you said this upcoming year?
Yeah. Starting
785?
785 after Rosh Hashanah.
60 years of what? Well,
Of-
their life?
No. 60 years of when the Rebbe started.
Oh.
It's the 60th yard side of the Rebbe's mother. And it's the 60th year. It's year 60 from when the Rebbe began delving into and exposing the brilliance of Rashi on an unprecedented level. A lot of people that teach Rashi today, or whether they say it or not, are using the Rebbe's sichot, the Rebbe's talks and insights on Rashi to explore, to share the dazzling brilliance. And literally for 800, 900 years, everyone studied Rashi, but everyone's taught Rashi basic. Like when you're a kid, you learn Chumash Rashi. When you get older, you can now, your mind is developed, you can learn other stuff. And there was like, let's take another look at Rashi, because there's a lot of dazzling brilliance right in Rashi that we might overlook, and it's otherwise under the guise of simplicity, we might miss the real, oh man, there's balloons now. What is going on here? You might miss the what's it called again? We might miss the brilliance of Rashi.
Who does that stuff?
It's my computer. It's a Mac. That's what happens. It has gestures for whatever reason, and so when you go like this, it happens. Confetti. Anyway, whoever's watching this on YouTube when we post it is probably going to be super. Like
to go back to the introduction, what was point number 4 for Rashi?
So point number 1 is Rashi, his stated intention is simple meaning. Number 2, Rashi will therefore explain all inconsistencies in the text. Number 3, if Rashi does not address an inconsistency in the text, it means either it's not an inconsistency or he's already addressed it elsewhere. Number 4, there's always a deeper insight that we can take. There's always a takeaway from Rashi that we can apply to our lives. In this case, it's about the danger of a riv, the danger of a quarrel, the danger of a dispute, or disagreement becoming personal, becoming ego-driven. All right, we'll close it out. See you guys. Lila Tov, Danny, Mom, Howard, and Charna, Lisa. Good to see you. Jeff and Diane, great to see you guys. Lila Tov, see you soon. Hey, Lisa, good to see you.